Okay, guys, welcome back. It's finally time to talk about how and why grandmasters break the rules that we so carefully try to follow all the time. So, I wanted to show you two games, and the first one is right in front of you. And the first question for you guys is: would you rather continue this game as the white pieces, or would you rather continue it as the black pieces? Notice that the black pieces has the king in the center. We cannot castle. Our opponent of seven is being attacked, so it's our turn, but we have to take care of these little details. So just keep that in mind and think to yourself, is this something that you'd rather continue as black, or would you rather be the white pieces? Now, the second game that I want to show you is going to be the same question. If you were playing this game, would you rather continue as the white pieces? Would you rather continue as the black pieces? And of course, try to come up with the ideas behind it. Well, in this video, you're going to see how the person playing with the black pieces, same player both games, got himself into these positions on purpose, and he knew what to do, guys, to get out of it and win the game. Now, both games, he's playing against other super strong GMs. On this one, he's playing actually Walter Brown, guys. This is more than once he was US champion. Very strong Grandmaster, of course. So let's start with this one, and let me show you the game from the very beginning. So this game started actually with d4, d6. I know, very odd move, but if you are a person who's familiar with these pierce positions or even king's Indian defense, you should be okay with the d6 move, right? Now, the white pieces here, they actually did e4, and something very important, the person here with the black pieces, Gulko, he mentioned that he decided to play like this because he knew his opponent is more of a king's pawn opening. So immediately the white pieces did e4 to get into a pierce defense instead of playing c4 to get into a possible king's Indian defense, right? So here we go with e4, then knight f6, pierce defense, but after knight c3, the black pieces played e5. Guys, of course, they know what they're doing. They understand that after pawn takes, the queens are going to be attacked. And at this moment, our king is going to remain in the center. Now, this is the first moment that I wanted to talk to you about this position. Why would someone get their king in the center if we have learned that we should be avoiding this at all costs? Well, one thing is that without the queens on the board, we're not so concerned about our king's safety. At any moment, I could leave the king in the center, or I could go c6 and then put the king on c7. And when we get to that endgame, my king is going to be closer to the center. It's going to actually favor us. And by the way, I hope that as we go through this video and more to come, you guys start to understand how every rule in chess is flexible. We could always bend them to depending on the position, right? So here we have king d8, then knight f3, attacking the pawn. And of course, we're going to try to defend it by developing pieces. Now, bishop c4, and here, try to pause the video and try to come up with the answer to this problem, guys. We have a pawn being attacked. We have to do something about it. What's the most logical way to defend the pawn? Now, if you thought of a move like rook f8, this is not exactly what we want here, guys. The rook is a pretty powerful piece. I do not want to commit to just defending a little pawn at this point in the game, right? Now, king e7 also seems logical, getting the king away from this file, bringing the king to a better position. But there are moves like bishop g5, knight d5 that could make this position a little bit uncomfortable. So instead, there's a move that is another rule that I know that we would never do this, but that's precisely why I'm showing you this game, guys, for you to see another move that we wouldn't do, but it makes perfect sense in this position. So the move that was actually played in this game was bishop e6. And I know when they take us, we're going to take back, and we get doubled isolated pawns. I have criticized this pawn structure so many times, but the point is that doubled pawns, I've told you, towards the edge, they're not that good. In the center, they're actually an asset because they control so many central squares, and they keep these knights away from getting into our territory and putting pressure. So pretty nice pawns. We just have to make sure that we don't get to an endgame, because the closer we get to an endgame, the more of a liability that they become. But right now, this is a pretty solid position, and we have a lot of control over the center. So after pawn takes e6, we got bishop e3, and now time to develop our knight, guys. So we finally developed the minor pieces, and if you think about it, these two knights, they look very powerful, but in reality, they are being defensive. This knight should not move from f3 because otherwise I'm going to put my knight in the center, defended by this pawn that is happy to get fixed if they take us. This knight is also defending the pawn on e4. So it looks like the black pieces are worse, but we are actually the ones with a nicer game to play or an easier game to play, right? And another thing that I didn't mention before is that double pawns come with other benefits such as semi-open files. So right now I have the F file, the D file that I should be capitalizing on. So now we have A3, then pawn to A6, and then look at this. The white pieces in this game, they just did king E2. They could have easily castle queenside, castle kingside, but again, guys, no queens on the board. We gotta be more flexible. We need to understand this is getting more and more like an end game. So it makes sense to leave the king in the center. Now, I connected the rooks and my king is closer to the center. Just getting ready again for that end game. So after king e2, we got king e7, rook d1, and even though this makes sense, the rook is coming to the open file, my bishop here is so powerful that it's not really allowing the rooks to do anything, and they don't even have an easy way to attack my bishop. So now you could see how a6 actually turned out to be a very nice move. So now it's time for us to start thinking of the same thing. I want to bring my rooks to the F file and probably the D file as well. But before we do that, we gotta be prophylactic. We have to control that G5 square, guys. I don't want the knight, I don't want the bishop to get there. So H6 was played, H3 by the white pieces, and only now we got rook F8. Now, if I could, I'm going to carry out my very simple plan of doubling up the rooks, put pressure on the knight, the pawn on f2. I definitely have a target to put pressure on. Now, rook d3, just getting ready to double up. And guys, it's black pieces to move, and they decided to start capitalizing on the weak squares in our opponent's territory. And the square that they're going for at this point is actually going to be f4. I know by definition it's not weak because this pawn could defend it at any moment. But after the move knight h5, everyone knows we're going to f4. And if they did this move, guys, this is actually what we're trying to provoke. So we're trying to provoke g3 because then it's true that f4 is not weak anymore. But what about f3? That pawn is advanced, the e pawn is advanced, so that's going to be a weak square. So when I double up on the f file, that knight is going to be in trouble. And of course, I could find ways to attack that bishop. When the bishop is gone, then f2 is going to be a new target. So after knight h5, we got knight h4. Let me actually put this one back. They did knight h4. And now the next move is a pretty powerful move, which is the stage where we guys have trouble for the most part. Many times we actually understand these concepts, we get to nice positions, but then when it comes to tactics, to calculation, we get a little bit lost. And that's why it's so important. We gotta train both. You gotta keep it balanced on a weekly basis. You gotta train your strategy, your tactics, and your end game. So with that said, I hope that you actually paused the video now. This is a critical moment in the game and you thought of your candidate move. You calculated them as much as you could. But anyways, I'm going to tell you the move that they did, guys, and I need you to try to visualize, try to understand why they did it. The move here was actually knight d4. And what I want you to calculate is what would you have done if the white pieces took on d4. So try to visualize that. Ideally, you'll be visualizing from here. That way you pretend like you're playing this game. So I'm analyzing knight d4. What if the bishop takes on d4? Well, I'm pretty sure you did not calculate the whole thing, but if you realize that once the bishop takes, f4 is going to become available, then congrats, guys. That's exactly what this move is all about. They cannot take on d4 because then we got knight f4. We're going to collect the rook, and of course, afterwards, the pawn is going to be still attacking the bishop. So for that reason, instead of doing bishop d4, the white pieces did king d2, and now, now I'm going to assume that you realized this knight is ready to create a fork. So in order for us to take care of it, simple, we're just going to do rook f6, another multi-purpose move. I'm taking care of g6, and I'm getting ready to double up my rooks on the f file. So after rook to f6, we got pawn to g4 attacking the knight. And guys, again, you have to be very, very careful now. It doesn't matter how good you are at strategy and positional chess and paying attention at the different squares and so on. If you miss little details, like tactical details, you're going to get in trouble. So that's why tactics is the most important part of chess, right? So here, if you thought of knight f4, you gotta be careful with, because once the bishop takes, you cannot take with the pawn or you lose the knight. and you cannot take with the rook or you get forked. So what move do we do here? Well, I hope that you pause the video again, and the move was actually pawn to g5. So if they take me, I take them, but I'm not giving up any material. So after g5, we got knight f5, very powerful move, and this is the kind of player that we're playing against. Very tactical, very good when it comes to forcing variations, and this is a move that we had to consider. But anyhow, after knight takes f5, we got pawn takes, then pawn takes knight. And now if I show you the engine, you can see, guys, how the position is, the evaluation is actually 0.0. So this is completely equal, and you can see how the black pieces turned that pretty bad position that nobody liked. He turned it into a very nice position for black. Now, I'm not going to show you the remaining of the game because mainly I just wanted to show you guys how the black pieces broke the rules. They got into that position on purpose because they knew that if they played energetically, if they focused on the benefits of having doubled pawns, they could turn the game around. And look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put here the name of the players and the year of the game. That way you can look it up and look at the remaining of the game. Now, we're going to go over to the other game that I showed you before. And here, notice how, again, the black pieces, if I go back a few moves, the white pieces did queen h5. And then after rook g8, the black pieces is basically giving the pawn for free. There's no reason for them to do this unless they wanted to. So rook g8, take my pawn, and now rook g6. So the white pieces go queen h5. We get to develop our bishop. And then after queen b5, this is the first question to you guys. Should we take the queen, let them take us, or should we just move it away? Well, you should know if we have this really bad pawn structure, we do not want to get to the end game. We want to preserve the pieces and get some counterplay. We want to be energetic. So the move here, of course, is to avoid the trade of queens. We got queen c7, then queen e2, and of course, I need to be prophylactic one more time. So the move a6 comes in not only to prevent knight b5, but it's going to help me get energetic and create counterplay. Now, notice that this king most likely is not going to castle to the king side. I have open lines towards it. And going to the queen side, I'm getting ready for that expansion. So we got pawn to f4, pawn to b5, then a3, and rook to b8, just getting ready to make contact. Guys, if we stay quiet, my opponent is going to get organized, is going to probably attack us, and best case scenario, we're going to end up in an endgame where we're just going to be inferior because of our pawn structure. Look, they have a passed pawn, we got doubled, this is not that good. Now, what's the compensation? Why did the black pieces get into this? Well, mainly because we got the pair of bishops and we got open lines to be energetic and put pressure. So after pawn to g3, we got pawn to b4. You see, being energetic, pawn takes, knight takes. Already my knight is in the territory. My queen is on a semi-open file. So is my rook. So is my other rook. So queen f2. Then bishop g7, just developing before I do anything crazy. And then after f5, I'm not going to take unless it's going to give me material, because if I take, that's going to be pretty ugly set of pawns, not only doubled, but isolated, 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 right? So instead, we move the rook. If they want to take, well, they're going to help me fix my pawn structure. So instead, bishop g2. And now, guys, remember, we need counterplay. And what better counterplay than attacking our opponent's king? And in order for us to do that effectively, we need the king to stay in the open, in the center. So what move can we do right now to prevent that king from castling? Well, the move is going to be queen to c4. The king cannot castle. Forget about going queenside. And then we have knight a5. They need the queen gone so that they can finally castle. Now, here, this next move, I'm not expecting you to find it, but guys, there's a very nice tactical move here, so take your time and see if you can find it. Simple, nothing extraordinary, but the move is actually queen to d4. So I'm offering the queen. If they take it, I'm going to take it back with a free pawn along the way, right? So queen d4, they did rook c1, and look, the black pieces are doing energetic move before, knight b4, queen c4, queen d4, energetic moves. The white pieces have an extra pawn, a better pawn structure, but they're just being passive, and it's very painful to play like that. So at this point, the black pieces decide to take, and it's mainly because they're going to get now their pawn back. And guys, and I know that you might be thinking, all right, he got the pawn back, but there's no way he's winning this game with doubled isolated, isolated, isolated. Well, guess what? Thanks to the activity of their pieces, the black pieces were able to win the game. And I just want to show you quickly, nothing too deep. I just want to show you some key moves and ideas that allowed the black pieces to win the game. So first, after bishop f5, we got knight c6. Okay, we're going to trade. Notice that I'm trading the knight, but I'm not trading my pair of bishop. So knight takes, bishop takes, king goes to d8, and then bishop a4. Now, at this moment, when I was reviewing this game, I did take some time to come up with candidate moves. If I were playing this game in a tournament, what would I do next? I thought of ideas like bishop h3, so that the king cannot hide, rook h3, trying to bring the other rook over, but I did not think of the move that Gulko did here as the black pieces. And guess what, guys? The move that he did many years ago is the same move that the engine recommends today. Very powerful move, so hard to find, but the idea is the following. He came up with the move bishop c8, and the idea is, according to him, to maximize the power of my pair of bishops. So I want to put my bishop on the long diagonal. So that's why the bishop is going to c8 to then go to b7. And this is really annoying because now the white pieces know the bishop is coming to b7, hitting the rook, and this pawn is going to be in trouble. So after bishop c8, we got rook d1 attacking the pawn. And the next move here is another move that separates the super good players from the rest of us, guys. This move that he did next, of course, we have to do something to defend that pawn. But the move that he did was a multi-purpose move. Again, multi-purpose move. Instead of just using the king, which of course doesn't make sense, or even the rook, it doesn't make sense, but these are moves that only defend. How about pawn to f5? This is a move that is very nice. Now my rook is not only defending, but it is also attacking. And more importantly, I got to open my bishop as well. So look, bishop on long diagonal, my other bishop is headed for the other long diagonal. So pawn to f5, very nice move. I like it even better than, than any of the other moves. Then rook goes to e1. They don't really care about the pawn. They know that rook here is going to be very, very powerful. So here we see another principle that we talked about on lesson 111. One of the benefits of having the pair of bishops is that you could give it up whenever you like. So the move here was bishop d7, just taking care of that threat. Bishop takes, king takes, and now we go into an endgame where we're still active, and I have bishop versus knight in an open position. So knight d5, give me the pawn. And by the way, guys, we were threatening to just take on b2, give me the pawn anyways, and the knight. So knight d5, trying to get to e7, give me the pawn, and now we double up the rooks. Now, this next move, check, is a move that it seems intimidating, but in reality, if we know what to do next, we're going to be just fine. Don't forget, we're threatening to do this, so this rook cannot be far from home for too long. The only thing that we need to be careful with is not to go somewhere where they could put us in check again. So I don't want to go here, check, I don't want to go here. Instead, we do king d8. I'm still hitting the rook, and they cannot put me in check safely again. So now, since we have this threat, the white pieces had to retreat to the first rank. And now, knowing that my opponent is cramped, they are basically in Suk1. It's very important, guys. Remember, there's no need to rush. Keep adding pressure. At this moment, many times we just want to make silly mistakes. We do check and trade a rook. No. Keep him under pressure and improve your position little by little. So we got bishop e5, putting pressure on the pawn. Then knight f4. Now, should I trade? Of course not. My bishop is more powerful than the knight. I want to keep it. Instead, they paid attention to this tactic. So the pawn is pinned. They could get the bishop at some point. So we got out of the way. Simple move. My opponent has nothing. So I could take a moment to move my king out of the way. So knight e2, bishop takes b2. And then, guys, let me just show you how the game ended. It was c3, a5, a4. And then after they took the bishop, well, check, and give me the rook. Guys, again, the person with the white pieces is a very strong grandmaster, but they just didn't have anything better. And once again, you could see Gulko taking these positions from looking really, really bad and turning them into a win because he understands these deeper concepts. Activity, the power of the pair of bishops, the multi-purpose moves, all of that, it's really important that we start getting familiarized with it.